the audience will grow in size as we go on. It's always, the first session of the day is always the challenging one, but this is, I think, a really important topic. We're going to have great fun discussing this. I know the panel are brimming, literally brimming with ideas, notions, arguments, data, statistics. It's going to be fantastic. It is one of the biggest challenges that the transport and energy transition face is the very enthusiastic and well-funded and determined and constant spreading of fear, uncertainty and doubt. And in case some of you may not know this, there is a wonderful book called The Merchants of Doubt, which follows it's just post-war history. It's from 1945 to the present day, a series of organisations, particularly in the United States, whose job was to delay change. So the list of topics is unleaded petrol, asbestos, smoking, catalytic converters, renewable energy, climate change, electric cars. The same companies are paid substantial amounts of money, and we are talking billions of dollars, not to stop these things happening. They never thought they were going to be able to stop them, but they delay them. So the sort of public acceptance that smoking was probably bad for you was delayed by probably 20 years, which meant the cigarette companies could carry on selling cigarettes. And they go, well, the science isn't in yet. We don't know that second-hand smoke really does harm your children. So carry on smoking in a closed car. I grew up with a chain-smoking dad, sat in the back of the Vauxhall Viva as Dad chained it as we drove to Cornwall. We were healthy. There was nothing wrong with it. We read about it in the Daily Mail. It was fine. And what is fascinating is that it's not only the same companies that have done all those different topics, in some cases the same individual people that the authors of this book tracked them through their careers. And they were, by the time they wrote the book, which is probably 10 years ago, they were full bore on climate change. The science isn't in. We're not sure that human activities are changing our environment and all those things. So that's what we're talking about, how we fight FUD. And I'm joined by a fantastic panel. I will go from the far end. The far end is Tom Callow from My Energy, who's Head of External Affairs. Tom's had a long history with electric cars. We've known each other a long time. Next to Tom is Sarah Sloman, Director of Future Mobility at Paythrough. Jill Nowell is next to Sarah, Head of Electric Vehicles at LV. And next to Jill is Kate Tyrrell, co-founder and CEO of Charge Safe. So let's go down. I'll start with you, Kate. How do you fight FUD?
Well, I think you just have to keep bolstering that positive message. I find that on platforms such as Twitter, the negativity does breed and that gets a much further reach. So it's kind of like using that platform to talk about the negative stuff. You get everyone's attention and it's like, actually, it's really not that bad. I put out a tweet a couple of weeks ago. I had a bad experience with a journalist and I said, I'm never doing it again. I'm not speaking to anymore because they've got an agenda. But actually, having spoken to Ian Johnston and Warren from the EVA earlier this week, they said, use your platform, keep fighting it. And I think that's the really important thing is don't give up, keep talking about it and get that positive message across again.
Yes, I just want to quickly tell you a quick story that happened to me recently. I was invited onto a BBC local radio station. I think there was some news, this is about 2 or 3 months ago, some news about electric vehicle related news, and they wanted to interview me, and the local DJ, who's generally called Mike, hi, welcome to BBC Radio Leeds. It was one of those channels, and he was so, he wasn't like balanced questioning, he was aggressively anti-EV. He thought they were a middle-class plaything. Hydrogen was obviously a future. Anyone who believes that battery electric vehicles are a future is an idiot. Really quite aggressive, and I really had to, I learned to, my wife is a psychotherapist, has taught me don't get angry, angry doesn't help, all those. I was trying very hard, but after we finished, I just hung up. It was a Zoom call. I hung up, my phone rang immediately. Oh, we were hoping you were going to stay to join in the podcast version. And I said, and I won't repeat what I said, but it was just expletives. And I just said, that guy's and I'm not going to talk to him, and I can't be bothered. I'm not going to live long enough to have to deal with an idiot like that, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, that's it, I'll never be on BBC Radio again. Seriously, ladies and gentlemen, every day I get a call from the BBC to be on the radio now, and it's so weird. So I think it's a lesson. Be really rude off the interview. Not on the interview, be really polite on the interview, and then but when I was effing and jeffing on this phone, I didn't know it was a speakerphone in the studio with the head of commissioning at the BBC and BBC Radio Controller and all these people. I had no idea they were there. But then, because I'm a polite middle class boy and well brought up, I could hear my mother and I just started apologising, which is terrible. I'm sorry, I used really bad language, it was really unnecessary. Anyway,
I'm talking that language.
Yes. My children and wife taught me that language. Jill, I know you've been in this arena for a long time. You've been an amazing force for good in electric vehicles. I mean, because you must have to face the same thing a lot.
Yeah, I think so. So I've been doing whatever I can to advocate for electric vehicles for about 10 years now. And I think even though the FUD-meisters, if I can call them that, do quite a good job, and they do spread that fear, uncertainty and doubt that makes people think, oh, actually, is it the best thing to do to switch to an electric car? Well, actually, yes, it is. And I think the approach that I've taken, that we take through electrics and LV, is that we just have to really make sure we're communicating really clear and accessible and factual information about how actually it can be quite straightforward to make the switch to an electric car. So, highlight the benefits and really help people to overcome all the common concerns that they might have around cost. We know that from research we've done, 45% of people in the UK are worried about cost, and that's a barrier. But then again, we know that if we can help people understand the total cost of ownership, then that helps break down that barrier. And running costs are almost 50% lower for electric cars, for example. But also, if we can start to help people think about how they might buy an electric car, leasing could be a really good option because it's manageable monthly payments. But there are also common concerns about range. But we know that most cars will take most people as far as they need to go, because I think the average range is now about 230 miles on a single charge. So actually, for most people, electric cars will be great. And other concerns about batteries. Well, again, we know that battery electric vehicles will run for hundreds of more thousands of miles before there's any issues with the batteries. So they'll far outlast an internal combustion engine vehicle. So I think we just have to keep on highlighting the benefits, bring real-world driver experiences into the mix, and do what we can to communicate. I think this kind of event is there are so many people here that are beginning on that journey to how can I make the switch, which electric car's best for me, and we're all here to help.
Yeah. Actually, there's a thing I don't normally like doing, but if you don't mind, can you put your hands up if you don't own an electric car now, if you're not a regular electric car driver? So quite a substantial proportion of the audience, which is really, really great to see that, because that's a very encouraging sign. Sarah, in your experience, what sort of FUD are you faced with on a daily basis?
So I mostly represent charge point companies and fleet. So for me, it's really important to make sure that our industry is building towards a green and sustainable future. But it's more than that. We're all people. We're never ever going to agree, and I just think there's so many technologies out there that are complementary to a sustainable future. But we really shouldn't naysay each other, because then that makes us FUDders too. So we can't sit here and state things that we don't fully understand. But what we do understand is electrification. I mean, this show of hands just now shows me that this show is doing exactly what it needs to do, because previously I don't think it would have been quite so many petrol and diesel people here in your class. So thank you for coming, and have a good poke about all the technology available. And enjoy it. The thing is, our industry is so much fun. It's such a pleasure to drive an electric car. There are many, many benefits of driving an electric car, but it still boils down to the right tool, the right job. So we're not going to be necessarily rolling out quite so many electric ships as we are cars, but that's okay, because there is technology out there that can do just as good a job for clean air, sustainability, and building future growth of our economy in this country. So I'm excited. As I said, we're human. We like things simple. We like things to work. We like them to do what they need to do to help us live our lives as normally as possible. But bearing in mind, we do have to change. We can't expect things to be the same. So that would be my plea. Anybody fighting FUD, do it with love and kindness, and you'll probably get a much better response than trying to fight fire with fire.
That's a very, very good point. I think that deserves a round of applause. Tom, you and I have been known to sometimes fight fire with fire. I think it's fair to say. We're slightly guilty. Slightly. I'm trying not. I now fight fire with some damn ashes as well. But you've been in this game as well a long time. What's your approach?
Well, there's a great, echoing what was said already, there's a great quote, I don't usually quote Socrates, but there's a great Socrates quote which says, the secret to change is to use all of your energy not in fighting the old, but in building the new, which I think is going to be printed on a t-shirt I'm going to make for myself. Because that to me is what it's all about. It's actually, if you focus on what you're trying to achieve and deliver, and the new positive stuff, you don't have to expend energy fighting people that still believe that their petrol V8 is superior to electric cars. For them it might be actually, for various reasons. So there's that. I think also the secret is to be a realist in that, the electric cars today, until they're not suitable for everyone right now, and actually a lot of that does come down to cost. So, if you're someone that drives a car that costs you no more than £1,000 or £2,000 to buy, and you can't afford to buy monthly payments, you cannot get into an electric car today. You cannot do it. The cheapest one out there is £5,000, you cannot do it. So to kind of label everyone that drives a petrol diesel car as somehow contributing to the problem, and you should switch immediately if you don't get poisoning your children's lungs, it's just really, really off-putting. And actually all you're doing is setting that person back on their journey, because they'll be even less willing to explore now, because they'll think that everyone who drives an electric car is part of some sort of secret, cliquey club, and that if you don't believe what they believe, you're not welcome. You've got to make people welcome and make it positive. So I think being a realist, being realistic about what's achieved when is important, and that's not to say that we don't want to push for revolution. But I think if you push for revolution, you get transition. But if you're unambitious and you say, oh, let's just gently transition, you'll probably get inertia. So it's right that people are on the barricades, it's right that people are making a lot of noise, but it's not going to be an overnight revolution. We do need to recognise it's going to be a long tail. And we'll get there, and people will become rigid. It's like saying that you can't cook, it's like criticising homemade meals because my 3-year-old can't make them himself. At some point in my day, he will be able to make his own meals, but the fact that he can't do it now it doesn't mean that making your own meals at home is a problem. It just means that other people take time to get it.
I really like what you're saying there. Obviously, at the moment, it doesn't suit everyone to have an electric car. E-mobility is the other huge part of this show. So even if you're reducing your vehicle use, whatever vehicle that is, including an electric vehicle, by the way, it's better if you can always deploy what I call the transport hierarchy. So can you walk it, cycle it, drive it, bus it, whatever, but choosing the right mode for that day, if you can. If not, obviously don't. But just thinking about it, again, human behaviour means we kind of default, we're quite lazy, we just do whatever. But it might not even be the one you enjoy. Have you seen the people trying those scooters outside? They're grinning from ear to ear because it's fun. And you're allowed to use them instead of a car if you can and want to. So yeah, e-mobility gets forgotten, equally as important in moving away from the consumption of petrol and diesel.
But then Kate brought up a topic that I remember the very first, I think it is the very first episode of Fully Charged I ever made, which was extremely crude and basic, but one of the arguments that I heard then, was where's all the electricity coming from, and all those very early arguments about electric cars. This was in 2010. And I knew from having done a TV show called How Do They Do It? And I'd spent 2 days at a big oil refinery, and I'd learned how much electricity was used by oil refineries, which was a surprise to me. This is 8 years before Fully Charged started. It was a different time. I was impressed with how much electricity they used. I thought, that's really cool. But I've just done some very brief research. So there was this thing called the United Nations Data Statistics Division that every year had every country's electricity consumption specifically for oil refining. And those numbers stopped being collected in 2006. And I still wonder why. So they don't publish them anymore. I'm sure they still collect them, but they're not made public. And I would think the oil companies are going, there's people looking at these, and it doesn't help our argument because it is a colossal amount of electricity. So 15% of all industrial global energy consumption, electricity consumption, not energy, electricity, very specific. 15% of all our industry around the whole world is to refine oil into petrol, diesel, and all the other chemicals and benefits, jet fuel, everything we get from it. That is a lot. That is a lot.
It is a lot, and let's not forget the whole cobalt argument, you know.
Cobalt.
And literally, like, the whole refinement process, how much more energy and materials are we using just to keep ICE vehicles on the roads? And that's something that doesn't really get talked about, so it's like flipping the narrative, you know. ICE vehicles are really bad for electricity consumption. It's crazy. Why doesn't this get talked about?
But then also my memory let me down there, because for years I had that cobalt argument, children are digging up cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo, cobalt. I had spent time in an oil refinery looking at cobalt that was used to remove sulfur from, like, right there in front of me, and I'd forgotten that was the case, which didn't help. Terrible.
ICE is internal combustion engine for everybody who
Well, thank you.
Sorry, Sarah.
Can you sit there us all the time and remind us of those things? Yeah.
So single use of cobalt to remove all of the
It's sulfur really from,
the fuel, and it goes into a battery, and suddenly everybody's concerned about where the cobalt's actually coming from when it gets several, like a lifetime's worth of use, and then after the end of your vehicle, you use the battery on the side of your house, or then have it recycled, and those technologies are now available. Let's have that discussion.
Yeah. No, very good point. That's something I've banged on about it for years, pointlessly, especially to the BBC. Tom, I thought you had, no, you weren't going to say anything. I was hoping.
I'm always on the cusp of saying something, but I just mute myself.
Jill's on the cusp.
Thanks, Robert. I think another related challenge that often comes up that I see a lot of comments about this is that, well, will the grid cope? Won't everything just blow up when everybody starts buying electric cars and charging them at home at tea time at the peak, when everything else is being used? Well, the good news on that is that, are we all right? Yeah. The good news on that is that the grid will cope, and at the local electricity network, so the underground cables, the overhead lines that feed the electricity to our local homes and our businesses, the distribution network operators have been looking at this for 10 years, literally. And I think it was you, Tom, said that actually, Ofgem have set aside £40 billion worth of investment to upgrading that infrastructure. So, in response to that challenge, the grid will absolutely be able to cope with mass uptake of electric cars, which is good news. And related to that is the fact that now, if you can charge at home, it's much cheaper and it's really convenient if you can do so, you're able to do so. But all charges now have to be smart, which means that you will, as a customer, be able to take advantage of cheaper energy tariffs and charge off peak. So that's really good news too.
No, absolutely right. Well, I would like to open the questions to the panel from the floor. If you want to ask a question, there is a microphone right near the camera behind. Oh, there's someone. I didn't know someone was going to come that quick. That's very good. I'm very pleased. So please do fire away.
Hello, yes. I spent quite a long time on my life trying to answer people's questions on Facebook. Is there any website where quite often I spend a lot of time trying to find an episode of the charge where you reference something, but after half an hour I give up.
Yeah, I do too.
Is there a website that you know of that information is interesting for your charge, generate reports and stuff that we can use to link back to people to find help?
Understanding. That's a good question. Yeah.
I think what you've touched upon there is there's a lot of information out there, and it's virtually impossible to find the argument that you're looking for when you really need it. And I think what we could probably do as a panel now is think of our favourite ones that we go to, our go-to. So we all absolutely love Ewan Walter. He's a doctor, and he speaks a lot of sense, and his is Plug Life. I am one of the 5 members of the EV Cafe, which again is a completely agnostic, fun place to ask questions. It's a community that we're looking to. Everybody is welcome, and we are not swayed by anybody. We all have day jobs, we do that completely voluntarily and separate to our own brands, so that's great. EV Cafe.
I am bound to say that I'd recommend having a look at lvelectrics.co.uk, just because we've got lots of really great information on there covering the basics, to costs, to charging, and we've also got lots of kind of real-world electric car driver case studies and industry insight on there as well. So electrics is one to look at as well. And I think EV database as well.
EV database is very good for
That's a
cars,
good one.
right? Yeah.
Great for cars.
Yes. And I please.
I personally really love that the animated video that you voice over, and I share it on Facebook probably every quarter just to keep it going. Because I'm like, this is fantastic, and it's do you know what you would search? I literally picked like Robert Llewellyn animation.
It's very dangerous just putting Robert Llewellyn in a search engine, please don't. But yes, because I now can't remember the name of it now. It's a very young man who did the animation, and he put it out in America with another voiceover, but they revoiced it for him, and it's really clever. Tom?
I mean, it depends on how kind of corporate you want to get, but something like National Grid actually published these things called future energy scenarios, and a lot of big organisations like National Grid have to publish stuff in very, very plain English. So actually, it's quite, some of what they publish is very understandable for a layman like me who's not actually that techy. But they actually lay out, how the energy system's going to transform and how much investment's going to be needed and how much energy is going to be needed. So things like that are actually quite good. You don't have to go to you don't necessarily always have to go to more of a consumer-facing source. Some of the industry sources are quite good. I mean, without wanting to point you all to it, the Committee on Climate Change, the Climate Change Committee, I think it changed its name.
Yes.
Climate Change Committee rather than Committee on Climate Change, I'm sure why. Publishes things called carbon budgets, which basically show the country how much carbon it can afford to burn, afford to actually expend, and basically saying if you go above this, you're not on the pathway to net zero. And for example, in that budget, it says we're going to need double to triple the amount of electricity by 2050, and that's fine. So there are things like that that actually just reassure people that actually, when someone says to me, but Tom, we need loads of electricity for electric vehicles and we do, that we consume today, I go, yeah. Okay, it's going to happen, it's not a problem. And if you want to be armed with facts and stats, here's one. We've decreased electricity consumption in the UK by more than 70 terawatt hours, not terawatt hours, more than 70 terawatt hours since 2005. Mostly because of LED light bulbs. LED light bulbs have been the single biggest contributor to energy reduction in the UK, not electric cars, sorry, not yet. And that Committee on Climate Change says that we'll need about that much to power all of the electric fleet by 2050 in the UK. So someone says we're only having as much electricity, you can say we've already saved. All the electricity we've already saved for LED light bulbs. Boom. End of argument. Move on.
I don't think we use boom when we talk about